Hello, my fellow mousepad crumbs, I'm Mr. Church. With the Gleaming Depths update comes changes to 24 perk cards. Some of them are really good changes in my opinion, and some of them are not so good. In this video I'm going to be going over all the changes, so you know what to expect when you log in and see that your build has been ruined. Now, if you've ever used an animal on the coil, and you've fallen off, but not before destroying your crotch, please like the video, because, well, it doesn't have anything to do with anything in the video. It's kind of just about like shared experience, bringing us closer together. I'm going to start with 7 cards that are just simple quality of life changes that are going to reduce the amount of stars or ranks that each perk requires, meaning you'll be able to slot a lot more cards in your build overall. Now, before I go into this rant 85 times, I'll just say it this one time, so you can mute the video and avoid it altogether if you want. But in any game where you have a limited amount of skills, abilities, or perks that you can use, the amount that you have is a massive buff. That is called card advantage in Magic the Gathering. Having more cards than somebody else is a massive buff. So anytime you are able to reduce the cost of a set amount of perks, allowing you to put more perks on your build, you're buffing your overall build. So anytime ranks of cards are reduced, it's actually a massive buff to the whole build. So I'm going to be going over the first 7 that are just that. Number 1, batteries included. This was simply reduced from a 3-star rank to a 2 rank card, which is pretty nice. The same has been done with thru hiker, except thru hiker has also been moved from agility to endurance. I'm not sure how I feel about it being in endurance, because there's a lot of perks that have been moved to endurance that you're going to want to use, but I do like that it's not in agility anymore. Agility has a lot of cramped space because it has all your sneak perks and your pistol perks and some of your shotgun perks and some VATS perks. So it's annoying having that weight reduction perk being in there, so moving that is fine with me. And the same has been done with Ordnance Express. And so those are all really great. The other cards that have been changed here, Cannibal reduced from 3 to 1, and that's pretty good. So you'll be able to slot more. That was an endurance perk, so having that reduced is going to be important to be able to slot that as well. And then Night Eyes, this one, you no longer need it to be nighttime to get the same effect. And I think that's going to be important because not only is this going to work in interiors and instances, such as, the daily ops or expeditions or, the Gleaming Depths themselves, but it's also going to be helpful in places like the Mire where it's always dark and stuff like that. Professional Drinker, this one was reduced from 3 to 2. I don't really think that's a card that a lot of people use, but it's still nice that that's been reduced. And then this is a big one, a huge quality of life change. Starched Jeans, not only was it moved from luck to endurance, which is good because we need those luck slots for like VATS cards and stuff, but it's also been reduced from a 3 to a 1, which is perfect because who has ever used 1 star of Starched Jeans? It's completely useless. If you're going to be putting cards into keeping something from happening, then you're going to want it to be 100%. So reducing that from a 2 to a 1, and it's a guaranteed thing, is an amazing change, and I'm here for it. Now let's move into linear changes. Some of the stuff they did are buffs, but some of the stuff are nerfs, and I'll explain with each one. There's only 3. So the first one is Lone Wanderer. So the first thing was a good thing. They reduced the rank from 3 to 1. They also gives it the ability scales with charisma. This could be a good or bad thing because you could potentially get more out of it than you could with the other one. Where this is bad is instead of reduced damage taken, which is what Lone Wanderer used to give you, now you get a damage resistance. Now, damage resistance has a soft cap, so damage resistance is always worse to have than a reduced damage taken. You'll be able to be a lot more tanky whenever it's reduced damage taken versus damage resistance being added until you have a redundant amount that doesn't do anything for you. So that part of it is a nerf. The other parts of it are buffs. Second, pharmacist. This one is reduced from 3 to 1, which is a buff, obviously. And you no longer need it to craft disease cures and water filters, which is a super niche buff, but a buff nonetheless. It also has your rad healing scales with your intelligence. Now, this could be a buff because you could technically get more rad healing out of it by having higher intelligence. But the problem with this specific one, in my opinion, is the people that are going to have the highest intelligence, thus get the most out of this card, are going to be unyielding players. Does an unyielding player want to remove their rads ever? No. So, and as soon as you do, obviously your intelligence is going down, meaning that's never going to work again. So, in my opinion, this card doesn't really make any sense, this rework to it specifically. And I don't really think, I mean, to be fair, I don't think people use this card very often anyway, but I just don't really think it makes much sense, and it's kind of self-defeating in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And last but not least, All Night Long. This one was reduced from 3 to 1, that's obviously a good thing. And it adds something that we've never had, which we've needed, which is the ability to extend the amount of time your alcoholic beverages buffs last, which is a good thing, especially for melee builds. Now, the bad thing about it is it removes something important and valuable to the game, which is hunger and thirst growing slower. This was the only card that slowed your hunger and thirst outside of your camp. And because we have Overeater's Armor, which is, in my opinion, that's meta for high health builds. And then we also have, of course, Gorbon's weapons, which people don't use as much, admittedly. But when your hunger and thirst can grow so quickly because of Speed Demon speeding that along, it's good to have something that slows it down. Even if it's only at night, that's still 50% of the time your hunger and thirst is growing slower, and it's easier to keep up with that, and your overeaters is better. So, in my opinion, they should not have removed the only card that did that for you outside of your camp. And so it's good in that they added a new thing, but it's bad in that they had to remove something valuable in order to do that instead of just adding a new card. So I don't really like that change, in my opinion. It's not as good as it could be. Now we're going to go on to basic buffs. Here's 4 cards that were buffed a little bit. We have Iron Stomach, which they simply added energy resistance. Before, it was only damage resistance. Junk Shield. The ranks were reduced, which is a good thing, and now it works in power armor as well, which is something it didn't before. And now it scales with not only your junk, but also with your luck, which I don't really see the point of that specifically, but either way, it's a buff overall of a card that nobody uses. Bloodsucker, the ranks were reduced. That's a buff. It was moved from charisma to endurance, which I think makes more sense. That might not be a buff in most people's opinions because there's not as many cards we want to use in charisma as in endurance, so it'll kind of clog up endurance. I don't really know about that. The bonus was increased from 150% though to 200%, and now it applies to cannibal. So those are 2 big buffs to it as well. So overall, I'm going to say that card is buffed. And then we have, lastly, Cap Collector. The ranks were reduced, which is a buff. And this is the big one. It now applies to corpses and lootable chests. And that's actually massive. And I'm going to have a lot of fun using this card, going around, picking up more caps all over the place. Oh, and it can be buffed with luck. So for an unyielding character, it's going to be a lot of fun to go cap hunting. Now, before I go into the big buffs, because there's 4 cards that were buffed bigly, I'm going to go over the cards that were hit the hardest, and because I don't want to end the video on a sad note. So let's do that first, and then what I'll do is I'll go over the big buffs, and we can kind of sugarcoat anything bad that happened, and like lie about stuff to convince ourselves that we're happy about things overall, because it was the last thing we saw, when in reality there could be stuff that's not as good. Number 1, Natural Resistance. Now, this is not a huge nerf. all they did was remove energy resistance from accidentally being on this card. That's more of a fix than a nerf, because, and it doesn't really matter, this card is used for the elemental resistances anyway, so the stuff you're going to want this card for are still very viable, and I'm still going to use this card probably on a lot of my builds. Hard Bargain, I don't know why they did this. First, they did reduce the rank from 3 to 1, but in this case, that kind of a reduction in rank doesn't matter as much. It's not as much of a buff, because it's the kind of card that you just slot to use here and there. Like, you're not going to run around with Hard Bargain on all the time. Do you spend all your time in vendors? And I don't mean player vendors, in-game vendors. Probably not. But other than that, it's a nerf, because old Hard Bargain, what it did was it gave you the equivalent of 9 charisma while bartering, and this one is only 7. I don't know why this change happened, I really don't, because altogether it feels like a lot of these changes have buffed unyielding builds, and this is yet another example of that, because you don't need the plus 9 charisma or plus 7 charisma if you're unyielding, but you're going to need that extra charisma if you're a high health build. So a lot of these things don't make sense to me. I don't know why that happened, but whatever, I guess. And specifically, the 7 charisma only works while you're bartering, so it really wouldn't be overpowered to put it on an unyielding build, because there was a cap anyway of 25%. So I don't understand why this change happened. It's just a nerf for no reason. First Aid. This one, the ranks were reduced from 3 to 1, so you could argue that that's a buff. However, because now the healing scales with your intelligence, you actually need 20 intelligence to get to that 45% healing that the old card gave you. So, I can't just have like a big fat tanky character and throw that on to get the 45% healing. I have to dump points into intelligence that I'm not planning on using to put it on a tanky character. Again, this is another situation where for a high health build, this is the kind of card that you're going to be using it with most of the time, you're not going to normally have that amount of intelligence, because that's not where a lot of the buff tanky cards are found. So it's not really going to synergize with your high health build, and that's the kind of build you're going to want this First Aid card to be used with. So overall, this is a nerf. I don't really like this change. And by the way, reducing it from 3 to 1 actually reduces the amount of points that you're putting into intelligence in the first place. So it's also like hurting itself in a way. Now, here are the 3 biggest nerfs that are happening, and you're going to feel them, especially if you're a bloody build. Number 1, adamantium skeleton. The ranks were reduced from 3 to 1. That's great. Now we can run extra perks. However, now the limb damage reduction scales with your endurance. And unfortunately, in order to hit that 100% limb damage reduction that the old card gave you, you have to have 100 endurance. And I'm sure that's possible, but that's not realistic. Especially considering that Unyielding doesn't even buff your endurance. It's going to be hard to hit 100 endurance. I don't even know if it's possible, actually. I know you can hit 100 of the other stuff with an Unyielding build legitimately, but I don't think you can hit 100 endurance legitimately. So you're not going to hit that outside of power armor. The problem is it's hurting high health builds that are not power armor builds as well. So it's not just an Unyielding nerf, it's a all builds but power armor builds nerf. So that's unfortunate, and it's going to really suck, I think. The next big one is Ricochet. This was reduced from 3 to 1 as well. However, now what it does is it increases your deflect chance based on luck. And what that means is deflect chance grants a chance to deflect 100% of the damage of range attacks back to the attacker, but it only reduces the damage you take by 50%. Now, deflect chance is pretty low. You have a very low percentage of that actually proccing, and it does receive a bonus while you're in heavy armor or power armor, and then if you're in power armor, the amount of damage is doubled. So this one is really going to be good in power armor. but it's not going to be as good in bloody builds because you're not going to want to run heavy armor as much because of this next nerf, which is the biggest one in my opinion, serendipity. This card is what keeps the bloody build alive. This is the most important card if you were a bloody build up until this point. And in fact, some people that didn't run it, they were just dying left and right and saying that bloody builds were glass cannons when that's not reality. Serendipity could carry your character through hell and back without a scratch on yourself. But now, it was reduced from 3 to 1. Hallelujah, what a miracle. But now what it does is it increases evade chance well under 30% health based on luck. So yeah, you will have high luck when you're in an unyielding build, so that's good. We'll already have a pretty good chance of it happening or whatever, but it won't be that high. It won't be as high a chance as before. And what evade does is it provides a chance to avoid all incoming damage, just like it used to do, just like this card used to do. But here's the huge nerf, okay? Now it has a cooldown. Evade can happen once every second. And that might not seem like a lot, but in combat, 1 second is a lot of fucking time. And it gets worse. That's if you're naked. The armor that you're wearing increases that cooldown per weight. It also can't happen while you're encumbered, over encumbered, or while you're in power armor. So again, this doesn't work in power armor. But here's the problem. So you start off with a 1 second cooldown. If you have a full set of light armor, that adds a half a second. So the best bet for getting serendipity to proc is to wear light armor. And remember, that means your ricochet isn't going to have as high a chance of proccing. And then medium armor adds 1 second. And then heavy armor adds plus 2 seconds, which means that's actually 3 second cooldown. 3 seconds between serendipity popping off is an astronomical amount of time. So imagine you get tickled by something, okay, and it procs serendipity, and then you get hit in the face with a nuke. But because it just went off, it's not going off again, and you just die immediately. There's not going to be a reason to run medium armor now, because if you're going to opt out of heavy armor and not get the buff for your ricochet, the only sensible thing to do would be to run light armor, which gives you the highest chance of your serendipity, or the lowest cooldown, I should say, on your serendipity. So this is a massive, massive nerf to serendipity. For those that don't know, Secret Service armor is heavy armor, which means you're going to have a 3 second cooldown now on your serendipity when you're in your armor. The armors will now say on them what weight they are, so you'll be able to tell what armor it has what weight, which will be nice. But this will not be nice. And you might want to tweak your build a bit to get a little bit more survivability, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough out on the streets. Now that I've ruined everything and made your life terrible, I'm going to cheer you up with these 4 big buffs. These are so good, guys. These are big buffs that are so good and yummy. The first one is evasive. Now, evasive, it used to give you damage and energy resistance scaling with your agility, but it wasn't that good. Damage and energy resistance don't really matter that much, because like I mentioned before, adding redundant resistances isn't that big a deal. It doesn't help that much. And evasive, as we mentioned before, evasion is what serendipity does. Evasion gives you the chance to avoid all incoming damage. So now you have a chance to have something like serendipity while you're at high health, which you didn't have before. I mean, Ricochet kind of functioned that way, and that's been nerfed. So this, you could kind of couple it with Ricochet if you were a high health build, and it would be pretty good. However, keep in mind, I believe that the evasion chance, the rules for evasion still count in this card as well as in Serendipity, meaning you'll still have that high cooldown with it. So evasion is going to work better when you have lighter armor, and it's not going to work at all in power armor. So that's pretty interesting to think about. Like, you're going to have to pick, do you want to get the most out of your Ricochet, or do you want to get the most out of evasive and then have weaker ricochet, vice versa. And it's going to be interesting to think about. But this is still a big buff compared to what it used to do, and I'll take that over a little bit of damage and energy resistance anyway, and it's only a 1-star card as well, so both ways you slice it, it's better than what we used to have, and it will take some of the edge off with the nerfs to serendipity and ricochet. The second big buff that's going to make your life complete is bullet shield. Now this one gave you damage resistance while you were firing a heavy weapon, and it was in strength, which means that's stupid because you can either have that for no reason, or damage because your heavy gunner perks are strength cards, you know, so you wouldn't have room. This moves it to endurance. Like I said before, a lot of stuff is being moved to endurance, but a lot of it is 1 star now, so you'll be able to fit a lot more of that in. This one does add a rank, so it is a 4-star now, but what it does now is per rank, it adds 5% chance to deflect, and like we learned, that's what ricochet does. Deflect, you take 50% of the damage, and you reflect back 100% of that damage. And if you're in power armor, which you're probably going to be if you're using bullet shield because you're firing a heavy weapon, it's going to deflect back 200% damage. So you're going to be doing a lot more damage to people shooting at you, and you're going to be taking less damage, and it's going to be actually useful to use on a heavy gunner build for now, and it never was before, and so that's a great change and a big buff. This next one is massive. 4-leaf clover. The ranks are reduced. That's a buff. But now what it does is misses and vats contribute to your critical meter scaling with luck. Now, on paper, this doesn't really look like much, but a bunch of hodgepodge, and words. And you're like, well, that's fine. That doesn't seem like that big a deal. Put it on and go use it. You'll thank me later, okay? This thing is OP, and I don't know if they're going to nerf it, but for right now it feels pretty yummy to use, and I'm really happy about it, and I'm excited to use it. It's going to be great for weapons that don't have great range or great accuracy, because keep in mind that crit hits have a 100% hit chance. So it doesn't matter if you're missing every shot now, your crit meter is going to fill up, and then you can use your crit, which is going to hit the shot. You know what I mean? So it's going to be great. It's going to be massive and pretty yummy. The last big buff and the last change to the cards that are happening to us on this day is Lifegiver. This one is a big one. First, ranks reduced. So that's a huge buff, because before it was a 4-star perk, which took up a lot of space. And before, it just gave you a little bit of HP, you know, just a base amount of like 40 or something HP. But now what it does is it improves your HP gain from endurance. That's a multiplicative buff, meaning for every endurance now, you're going to be getting more HP. And what it's going to end up looking like is you're going to be seeing like 100 or more extra HP instead of like 45 or whatever it used to be. So this is a massive buff. It's going to be massive for survivability. Adding to your HP pool makes you a lot more tanky and allows you to take more hits. So this is a huge buff. I'm excited about Lifegiver, and some of these cards are pretty exciting. But let me know what you guys think in the comments of this video. What are your favorite things you're looking forward to? What are the things you're dreading? And do you believe in magic? If you do believe in magic, I have a Patreon, and the link for that is in the description if you're interested in joining me in that place. I do upload exclusive and magical content. But I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my channel members and patrons for your support. I wouldn't be able to be doing this stupid things that I'm doing without your support, and it really does mean a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And also, if you guys are in the Discord, consider joining the Discord. It's a great community, and there's a place to share your camps, to talk to other human beings, and to talk to things that you thought were human beings at first, but when they start talking, you're like, wait a second, I'm not so sure at this point in time. I hope you guys like this video. If you're not subscribed, well, I can understand that, actually. And I'll see you guys in the next video.